Hello and welcome to creating a JavaScript snake game, part 2. So our last class, my name is Scott Bartow, and this class is offered by the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. The last class that we worked on, we were working on two files. One was an index.html file, and the other one is an index.js file for JavaScript. And if you look at my screen, you can see that this is how far we got. We basically created an orange cube that represents the head of the snake, and what we were going to work on next is the actual code that is going to allow us to use the up, down, left, and right arrows on our keyboard. So if I go back into our JavaScript file, you can see it here. And so this file is index.js, and we're creating our programs using Notepad for the text editor. So off to the left, you can see our index.js file as far as we got in the first part of this tutorial. And what we're going to do now is we're going to basically add an event listener. So down here, below the game loop, and the clear screen, and then we have draw snake, and we're going to put this function down here. And first, what we're going to do is we're going to do document dot body, and then we'll do dot add event listener, and we will do single quote, key down, single quote, comma, and then we'll do key down. Put a capital D for down, and we'll close that up, and semicolon. All right, so that's our event listener. So we're going to be listening for keyboard strokes, the up down arrow key or left right arrow key to move our snake. And the first key we're going to be working with, we're going to create a function, and it's going to be key down, which you can see on the line that we just added for the event listener. We're calling the function key down. All right, so we call this key down, and in parentheses, we're going to pass the parameter event, and then we're going to do a curly bracket, and enter a couple times, a few times, closing curly bracket, and then up indented inside the function, we're going to add a comment, so 2 forward slashes, and we'll call this up. And what we'll do is we'll do if event. So if the event dot keycode equals 38, equals 38, so if, and we have to surround the if conditional with parentheses. So open paren event dot keycode equals 38, and 38 represents the up arrow key. So if that, and then we'll do a curly bracket, hit enter a couple times, indent and do a closing curly bracket underneath the if, and then go up inside the if and indent inside the if. And what we'll do is we'll do y velocity, which we defined up above, equals 1. Oops. Always end your JavaScript statements with a semicolon. And then we'll have x velocity equals 0, semicolon. All right, and that is the if statement for the up arrow key inside our key down function. All right. And why don't we do a quick file save, and then I'll come over here to where I run my index.html file, and it opened it up inside the web browser. I'll do a refresh, and now if I do up, it's not going to work, because what we have to add is we go back to our JS file, and what we're going to add above the event listener is we are going to add something, a function called we'll add function, and this will be we're going to call this change snake position. All right, and we'll do opening and closing parentheses, opening curly bracket, hit enter a couple times, closing curly bracket, go up inside your function, and we're going to do head x is going to equal head x plus x velocity, semicolon, hit enter, and then we'll do head y, and that's going to equal head y plus y velocity, semicolon. All right, so that is our change snake position function. And what we have to do is we have to add that, we have to call this function here, and we'll put that up in our game loop. All right, so we have clear snake, or clear screen, draw snake, and then we can put it here under draw snake, change snake position. So I'm calling the function by name, and then opening and closing parenthesis. All right, and let's just see. So where we do our change snake position call, actually we want it to be called just before we do our draw snake. So we can have, in our game loop, we have clear screen, and then change snake position, then draw snake, and then our set timeout. All right, so we do file and save, come back to our web browser, refresh the page, and now I can't even see my snake. So let me see what's wrong. So I figured out what I did wrong, and what it is I didn't create a couple of variables. If you look over to the right of my screen, my snake game is being run in the Chrome browser. So I brought up the web tool, the web developers tool for Chrome. So off to the right, and I opened up the console tab, and it said X velocity is not defined, which when I looked at my index.js file, I noticed I never defined the variables x velocity or y velocity. So let x velocity equal 0, and then let y velocity equal 0. And now when we do a file and a save, I'll come back to my web browser, run my game, and now I have my snakehead back, which is in orange. And if I try and do, let's see, I define the up arrow key. So if I do up, there it goes. All right. So now what we have to do is we have to go back to our index.js file, and down below here in our function key down, we have the key up all defined, but now we need key down. So I'm just going to copy the key up code and paste it there. And then below that, I'll paste it again. And below that, I'll paste it again for left and right. All right, so now we're working on down. So I'll change the comment from up to down, down, and the event code key is 40 instead of 38 for up. It's 40 for down, and the y velocity is going to be 1, right? Because the y-axis shows up and down, right? It shows vertical. So if I want to go down, I want the y velocity to be heading down, and the s velocity is going to stay at 0. All right, so now let's do left and right. Left. Change the comment. I have to change the key code. So for left, the key code is 37. The y velocity is going to be 0 in this case. And the x velocity is going to be -1. -1. Lastly, we're going to have right for the right key, right arrow key. And this is going to have a key code of 39. The y velocity will once again be 0. And the x velocity will be 1. All right, so let's do a save. So file, save. Back to your browser. We'll do a refresh. Now I will let it go up. Let me refresh the browser. All right, so if I go up, I hit the up arrow key and it's going to the right. What if I hit the down arrow key? Down arrow key goes to the right. Click on that. The left arrow key goes to the right. All right, so let's see what I did wrong. Come back to our code, and we have y velocity, x velocity. All right, our codes are going to be 38, -1, and 0. What it is when you're using JavaScript, when you have an if statement, you can't. If is it's conditional in programming, and you can't have a single equals sign. You have to have double equals. So every time it's looking at the event key code, you want equals either 38, 40, 37, or 39. All right, so I'll do a file save. Come back to our browser, refresh it. Let's say I'll do down, I'll do left, right, up, up. All right, all our keys are working. Okay, I'll refresh it again, recenter the head of the snake. And let's go back to our JavaScript file. Okay, one thing we have to work on, we have to prevent is, we have to prevent the snake from crashing back into itself. So what will we do? So let's see, we don't want to allow them to crash back into itself. So we have to add some guards. Let's see. All right, so let's add some guards. So to do the guards, we'll look at our key down function right here. And first of all, we'll do the guard. So if I'm pressing up, I don't want to be able to go down because what that does is it has a snake crash into itself. So what I'll do is I will put, when we have the event code equal to 38 for up, right? And within that if, we will do another if. So if parenthesis, and we have y velocity equal 1. Close parenthesis. Oops. So we need equal 1 and close parenthesis, and then we'll do a curly bracket and enter. And actually, we don't need the curly bracket because we're just going to have a simple command within the if. I'll indent it, and all we're going to do is return. All right, so it just won't allow it to happen. All right, so now we can take that code, we can copy it, and we'll pop it in the down arrow key. All right, so we have y velocity, and what we do here is have equal -1, and we'll do a return, and then for the left, if you have x velocity, so make sure you change your variable from y velocity to x velocity. And so for left, we're going to have x velocity equal to 1. And for right, equal to 1 or equal to -1 for x velocity. And I'll do -1. All right. Now, let's do a file. Save. Come back here, refresh our page. All right, so if I hit the up arrow key, I don't want to be allowed to hit the down arrow key. All right, so up. Okay, refresh it. If I hit the left arrow key, I don't want to be able to then hit the right arrow key, and I'm not allowed to. All right, so those were guards that we added to prevent the snake from crashing upon itself. All right, so next part, we're going to add the apple onto the screen that the snake is supposedly going to eat. So let's go to our JS file. Let's add the apple now. And first thing we have to do is we have to go towards the top of our index.js program, and we want to add a couple of other variables. All right, so we do let apple x equal to 5, semicolon, and we're going to do let apple y equal to 5, semicolon. Now down below here, after the change position, we're going to call a function called drawApple. Parentheses, semicolon, and then down below here, under our change snake position, we'll draw the apple. So we'll do a function draw apple, parentheses, space, semicolon, a curly bracket, and then closing curly bracket, and then indented inside the function. What we're going to do is we are going to do CTX for context, fill, style, and what we'll do is we'll have style is going to equal single quote red, single quote, semicolon. All right, and then on the next line, we're going to have CTX dot fill rect for rectangle. And what we'll do is we'll give it curly brackets, and we're going to have some arguments, apple x, comma, apple y, comma, tile size, comma, tile size. Close parenthesis, and a semicolon. And now let's do a file save, come back to our web browser, do a refresh. And there in the upper left-hand corner, we have this nice apple. All right, so what's next? All right, so now we have our snake. We have the arrow keys, the up, down, left, right arrow keys working. And we've added our nice red apple for the snake to attack it. So what is next? All right, All right, so the next thing we have to do is we have to check to see when the apple collides, or when the snake collides with the apple, basically eats the apple, right? And there's all kinds of things we want to do once that happens. So one thing we want to do before we handle collision detection for when the snake actually eats the apple is down in the function that we just created, the draw apple function, for apple x, for CTX fill ret, apple x, we want to move that apple away from the upper left-hand corner. So one way to do that is to have apple x times tile count. And the same for apple y. All right, so we'll do times, which is the asterisk, tile count. We'll do file save and refresh and see. My apple now is moved away from that upper left-hand corner. It's 5 over on the x-axis and 5 down on the y-axis. All right, so now back to our index.js file. So we want to add apple collision, so we'll do the call up here, and we're going to do it before we draw our apple. All right, so apple, we are going to call this check apple collision, parenthesis, semicolon, all right, and then down below, before our draw apple function, all right, we'll do function check apple collision, parenthesis, curly bracket, couple lines down, closing curly bracket. And then inside our check apple collision, what we're going to do is we're going to say if, parenthesis, oops, that's not where we want it. So we want it inside the check apple collision function, if, parenthesis, and we'll do apple x equals if apple x, three equal signs. Remember, we're doing conditionals, so if it equals head x and apple here. So the two ampersands are for and apple y equals three equal signs equals head y, closing parenthesis and curly bracket. So if this happens, then we have a collision. So it means the snakehead, the orange snakehead, ran in and ate the apple. And when that happens, we want to do a few things. So we want the apple to move positions once it's been eaten. And so apple s, the apple x coordinate, is we're going to use the math method or the math package. And we'll use the floor method, which will round down. And then inside the parentheses, we're going to do math.random, parenthesis, times tile count, and parenthesis, semicolon. And now we can just copy this for the apple y-axis. All right, so we'll put this down below. And we'll change the variable apple x to apple y. Oops, apple y. And we'll have math.floor, math.random times tile count. And we have enough parentheses, opening and closing ones. And that should be it. All right, so now we'll do a file. So this is to create the, we created the apple, and now when the snake collides with the apple, we're doing the function, we're calling the function check apple collision. When there's a collision, what we want to do is we want to move the apple to another place on the screen. So I've saved my file, and I will do a refresh. And what I'll do is I will try and eat the apple. I did it. Okay. So I ate the apple, and the apple moved. All right. So that's working fine. Let's go back to our JS file and see what's next. All right. So now we have the apple being moved, and all right. So we have the snake. We're checking when the snake collides with the apple. All right. And we reposition the apple when that happens. We want to, now we want to work on adding the apple to the snake. Basically creating the tail of the snake. Whenever each one, we want to add it to the snake, making the snake bigger and bigger. All right. So now let's move up above, and we're going to create a class. Let's see. All right. So let's do our class. So class space, and we're going to call this class snake part. All right, and we'll have curly bracket and enter a few times, closing curly bracket. And inside the class snake part, what we're going to do is we're going to have a constructor, and we're going to give it an X and a Y coordinate. All right, and then we'll do a curly bracket and curly bracket. And then inside our constructor, we're going to define X and Y. So this dot X is going to equal X, semicolon, and enter. And this dot Y equals Y. All right, so that's our class. I'll get rid of this extra space here. All right, so we have a class called snake part. And down below here, we're gonna create something. We're gonna create a constant. It's gonna be a variable, or I mean an array. So CONST for constant. And we're gonna call this snake parts. And that's gonna equal opening and closing square brackets and semicolon. And opening and closing square brackets represent an array. So we're creating a brand new array. And then we need one more variable. All right, so what we want to do is we want to go down. We want to add one more variable. And what we'll do is we'll do a let tail length equal to 2. All right, so when you start your game, you're going to have the snake head, which will be orange, and you'll have a tail that already has a length of 2 cubes that'll be green. All right, even though you haven't eaten any apples to add to that tail length. All right, so and then what we want to do is we want to go down to draw snake, and under this function, we're going to put the head down below, which is orange, right? So these two lines create the head of the snake. And what we'll do is inside the function, we're going to add CTS. Actually, why don't I'll just do, do CTS fill style title, and it's an equal, and it'll be green, and semicolon. All right, and then what I'll do is I'll do for. Oops. I'll do for parentheses, and we'll do let I equal to 0, semicolon, and then I is less than snake parts dot length, which is our array, semicolon, and then I plus plus, and then parenthesis, space, curly bracket. All right, so our for loop is going to have curly brackets, opening and closing, and then inside the for loop, we are going to do let part equal snake parts square bracket I square bracket semicolon. All right, part equals snake parts, and then we're going to do cts dot fill rect parenthesis part dot s times title count, comma, part y dot y times tile count, comma, tile size, comma, tile size, the x and y, and then I have a closing parenthesis and a curly bracket. Oops, curly bracket. That's no good. So up here, got the semicolon, and that's it for the statements you want in your for loop. Now, what we want after that is we want snake parts dot push, and what this is doing is pushing. It's adding on the snake part, which is a green cube, to your snake by pushing it into the array. All right, and then we want new snake capital S snake capital P part parenthesis, and we'll have head X capital S and head capital Y, parenthesis, double parenthesis, and semicolon. And the next line, if, and you have a parenthesis, and you have if the snake parts dot length, right, our array, if it's greater than the tail length, oops, all capitals, parts, snake parts dot length is greater than the tail length, parenthesis, and for the brackets, then inside the if this is the case, then we want to do a snake parts shift, parenthesis, and close it out with a semicolon. All right. All right, so let's give this a try and see what happens. We'll do save and file, and we'll do file and then save. And now I'm going to refresh my browser. Oh, doesn't like that. Snake part is not defined. All right, on 66. So I spelled snake part without the E for snake. So if I go back here, snake part is right. Snake part right here. Capital S snake, capital P part. I'll do a file, save over here. refresh my browser. All right, snake part fits this. I put a K in here. That's not defined. See, you can see on the right-hand side, I'm using the Chrome Web Developer tool. And you can see how handy it is. It's telling me, hey, you spelled this variable name wrong. So I'll go back and I just have to find it. Not there, not there. Snake parts, snake part, snake parts, snake parts. Where is it? Oh, right here. Let part equals snake parts. Oops. I'll get rid of the K. Just drop my mouse. All right, so I have to get rid of the K. Oops. All right, so I have snake parts. Now let's do a file. Let's save it up. And we'll do a refresh. All right, so when I run, nice. Oh, all right, I'm not very good at this. All right, so I do a refresh. All right, so now what I want to do, when I start the game out, you can see two green squares following the snake head. That's because we set the tail length as at 2. So if I move, I'll move to the left. I'll try and eat the apple. All right, now what we have to work on is adding the apple to the adding it to the snake. All right, so we've got our tail length added to our snake. So now let's go. So one thing I forgot to add is if you go to the function check apple collision. All right, so what was happening was my snake wasn't, every time I ate an apple, my snake wasn't adding a green tube body part to the snake. And what I forgot to do is down in the check apple collision, what I have to do is I have to increment the tail length by 1. So I just say tail length, tail length plus semicolon. And so every time there's a collision with the apple, I'll do a save. There should be a body part added to the snake. All right, so let's go into our web browser. And okay, so I'm gonna run the game. All right, it's working. All right, so I added a square when I ate the first apple. All right, so now the next part of the game that we have to worry about is we have to start keeping score. All right, so that'll be the next part. All right, so if we go towards the top of our program, what we're going to want to do is create a variable, let score equal 0. All right, so we have that variable. And then in our game loop, below the function call for draw snake, we're going to add a function call draw score, parentheses, semicolon, and then right below here, we'll have, we'll do a comment and we'll do draw score, and we'll do function, draw score, parentheses, space, for the brackets, right? So we get draw score. And what we're going to do is we're going to do CTS fill style 2020 and semicolon. Oops. We're going to fill style, sorry. And that's going to equal to white, surrounded by single quotes, and CTS dot font, right? Because this game over is going to be in text, right? And that's going to be 10 pixels per data. So single quote 10 px per data. And then lastly, we're going to have CTS dot fill text. Oops. CTS fill text. And oops. Parentheses. And we'll do double quotes for double quote. Actually. So it's store space, then a double quote. All right, and then space, and we'll do a plus sign to concatenate, and we'll add the store, comma, canvas, width, dash, 50, comma, and 10. All right, so that should do it. Okay, so that's draw sword, that's being called, and that's what we want to do. Okay, so let's see what happens here. We'll do a save, we'll do a refresh. And now I've got soar and set to 0. And let's see what happens if I eat this. Okay, so it's not incrementing. So once again, just like when we had to add a piece to the tail, we have to look to see inside the function check Apple collision, right? We added one to the tail. Well, now we're going to do one to the soar. Right? Soar plus plus, which adds 1, semicolon. All right, we'll do file, save it, refresh our browser, and not very good at this. There we go. All right, so I ate 2 apples, and now the soar was incremented by 1 for each apple, so now we have a soar of 2. Okay, next up, what we need to do is we need to be able to add times when the game over is displayed. All right, so okay, so that's our next piece. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go into our game loop. Right here, our game loop, draw game. Okay, so the first function is change snake position. So do that, and actually I'm going to move the clear screen position, clear screen call to the function. So I'm going to have the first function is going to be change snake position, and then the second function will be the clear screen. And then I want to add some code after the change snake position call. And what we're going to do is we create a variable. That result equal is game over, parentheses. All right, so let result equal is game over. So that's the call to the function we're going to create, is game over. All right. Oops, I'll do a semicolon there, hit enter. And then if result, I'm sorry, if parenthesis result, if it's true, then what we want to do is, inside this if, we want to just do a return. Semicolon. All right. So that's good. That's that. Now we have to create the is game over function. So down here, just below the draw game. So this is going to be game over. All right, hit enter. We'll do function is game over. Is game over. Parenthesis, semicolon, semicolon. And inside our function, we're going to create a variable called let game. So the variable is going to be game over. And we'll set that to the Boolean false. Semicolon. And the next line, we're going to do, we're going to check for walls. All right, so walls. So put the comment in. All right, so now if head x is less than 0, parenthesis, curly brackets, closing curly brackets. So what's going to happen if head x is greater than 0? We're going to say game over now equals true. So game over equal to true. Lowercase true. All right, so that's game over. Let game over false to start. And then we're going to do a simple return. Return game over. Right, so it'll be returning that it's true when we hit the wall off to the left, right? Head x is less than 0, yeah. So that's what we're doing here, is we're checking for the wall off to the left. All right, so let's do a file and we'll save it, refresh our browser, and if I start, boom, okay. So it pauses when I go to the left, and let's see. So what do we have to do next? Let's see, we have to display the game over sign. So what we'll do is down here, inside the if game over, we have if head x, right? So what we'll do is we'll do another if parenthesis game over parenthesis curly bracket, then curly bracket, and what we want when we hit that wall, we want to display the text game over. CTS fill style, and that will equal white. CTS dot font, that's going to equal do 50 pixels. Banana. Single quote. That. And the last one is ctx.fill text, just like what we used when we created the store. And this text is going to be game over. Right. Canvas dot width 6.5 comma canvas height /2. Let's see. And a semicolon. All right, that should be it. All right, so I do a file, I do a save, refresh my browser, and then what I have to do is eat an apple. Or actually, I'll just go to the right, left. Boom, game over. Beautiful. All right, and it leaves the screen the way the game ended. With the sword, with the apple that wasn't eaten, and with the wall that you crashed into. So now we've gone to the left side, the left wall. We have to put in code that will look for the right wall and the up wall and down wall. All right, so if I go to the right wall, it just disappears beyond the wall. So I'll refresh the browser, and now let's add the right wall, the top wall and bottom wall. And the way to do that is right here. We'll just copy this up, and I'll hit else if. So if headx equals tile count, this is going to be going to the right. Tile count, all right. So if it equals 20, I know I've hit the right side of the wall, and I want game over to be true. All right, so now let's copy these two for the top and bottom. Change this if to else if, and head y, and y, and x. So head y, if that's greater than 0, then game over is true, and head y, if that is equal to tile count, game over. All right, let's do a file. We'll do save. Let's do a refresh. And let's play. All right, so let's see what happens when I go to the right. Boom, game over. Refresh. When I go to the left, game over. When I go to the top, game over. And finally, when I go to the bottom, game over. All right, so when you hit the walls, the game over, the game will be paused and the game over sign will come up. I'm not very good at this. Boom. All right, score's good. I hit the wall, the bottom wall. Game over came up. I was able to eat 2 apples. So we start with 2 apples or 2 segments for the tail, and I was able to eat 2 apples. So I have a total of 4 green segments to my snake. And so the game over sign will be flashed, and the game will end when you hit any of the walls. And that's it for the JavaScript snake game. So thanks very much for joining me with this tutorial, this 2-part tutorial, and offered to you by the Clifton Park Half-Moon Library. And I hope you've learned a bit from this class. And my name is Scott Bartow, and thanks so much for joining me.